As you might have noticed, it's been pretty hot in Europe recently. But as well as just generally being a bit much, at least that's how most of us Brits feel about them, these heat waves are also due to have a surprisingly significant impact on Europe's economy. So in this video, we'll take a look at how these heat waves are impacting the continent's economy and the sectors that have been hit hardest as a result. Which flag is better, Canada or Iceland? How about Japan or Mexico, Albania or Barbados? How about a battle of the dragons, Wales or Bhutan? Voting closes this Friday and it's linked in the description. The heatwave that hit parts of Europe in June was the most severe on record, according to the World Weather Attribution. The reasons behind this year's intense heatwave are quite complex, but the TLDR is that huge swathes of Europe have been suffocating under a stubborn heat dome sitting over the continent. That's been trapping hot air and causing extreme, dangerous heat and humidity. Heat domes themselves are nothing new, but climate change has been a major driver in their rising frequency and intensity. According to the European Union's Copernicus Climate Monitoring Service, the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere makes extreme heat events more likely, simply because warmer baseline temperatures mean that heat waves start from a higher point, making them more severe when they arrive. The consequences for nature and human life have been devastating. Europe's high temperatures have led to the burning of almost 500,000 hectares across the bloc as of July 29th, according to the European Forest Fire Information System. Hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to flee wildfires across Europe, leading to what are believed to be the largest peacetime evacuation operations in countries like France and Spain. Spain even had to declare a national emergency, the first time the country has ever done so over a wildfire. In June this year, the hottest month on record in Western Europe, European countries reported more than 10,000 excess deaths, with the vast majority occurring among people aged 65 and above. And although it's impossible to know the exact cause behind these excess deaths, it's hard to see the explanation as anything other than extreme heat, given the timing and who it's impacted most. But as well as being generally and self-evidently misery-inducing, these heat waves are also due to have a surprisingly significant effect on Europe's economy. So we've identified 4 sectors that the heat waves have hit particularly hard, and that in turn have badly hurt many European economies: productivity levels, energy supply, transport, and agriculture. Let's start with productivity. Lost productivity is the most immediate economic cost of a heat wave, and an obvious factor in a country's loss of GDP. A study by German insurer Allianz found that labour output per hour falls by roughly 3% for every degree of temperature increase between 30 and 35 degrees. For reference, temperatures have topped 40 degrees in parts of Europe this summer. At the same time, rising demand for cooling pushes up energy prices, which drives up business costs. All in all, Allianz estimates that past heat waves have cut Europe's GDP by as much as 0.5% and by more than 1% in southern Europe, implying that we should expect a similar drop this year. Looking further ahead, Allianz modelled a stress scenario using the 5 hottest years between 2014 and 2024, then repeated that pattern between 2026 and 2030. The result was a cumulative GDP loss of between 5 and 7% in France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. On to our second point, the impact of heat waves on energy supplies. Heat waves create a rather unfortunate combination for our energy systems. Demand rises just as supply falls. Millions of people across Europe crank up the cooling, which pushes power usage higher and strains grids. At the same time, some sources of generation suffer just when they're needed the most. Wind power struggles during heat waves when still air is the norm, and while solar power has helped to meet demand, extreme temperatures also reduce the efficiency of solar panels. Recent heat waves, however, have hit thermal plants like gas and nuclear particularly hard. During a heatwave, the rivers and seas used to cool the reactor core and other crucial components run much warmer than usual, forcing some reactors to shut down. That's essentially what happened in France, which was recently forced to curb output from its nuclear fleet, Europe's largest and normally a major exporter of power to neighbouring countries. Other, more extreme measures have been taken elsewhere. In Romania, for example, around 180 kilograms of explosives were used on Monday on the drought-hit Danube River to redirect water flow towards one of the country's nuclear plants. In Hungary, the country came extremely close to fully shutting down its only nuclear power plant for the first time in the plant's 44-year history, as low water levels in the Danube made it impossible to cool the power plant. That single plant supplies 40% of the country's electricity, so a full shutdown would have forced businesses to halt production. The power plant is still working for now, but it's operating at less than half its normal capacity, so economic damage is still likely. Put simply, rising demand and falling generation across the continent have pushed electricity prices higher, which in turn squeezes households, businesses, and governments. The third item on our list is transport. Low water levels on the Rhine, for instance, usually one of Europe's most vital commercial waterways, are forcing cargo vessels to run with reduced loads. This increases transport costs for coal, chemicals, and industrial goods traversing Europe's manufacturing heartland. Extreme heat has also damaged rail tracks and roads in several countries, which has in turn hit both passenger travel and freight movement. Fourth, and finally, is agriculture. Successive heat waves have caused crop damage and water shortages across parts of Europe, while wildfires have destroyed forests and farmland. The heatwave that swept across Europe in June is estimated to have cost the continent's grain farmers €2 billion in lost revenue and destroyed 9 million tons of crops. According to Oxford Economics, this heatwave could pose a bigger threat to food prices in 2027 than the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the event that sent oil and fertilizer prices soaring and triggered talks of potential food crises. The point we're trying to make is that heatwaves impact pretty much all aspects of life, and the fastest warming continent is also one that's wholly unprepared for a future in which heatwaves become more frequent and intense. Some companies are already reacting, with the Eurostar, for example, announcing a new fleet of trains designed to withstand temperatures of up to 55 degrees. But more structural initiatives will have to be thought of if Europe wants to minimize the impact that increasing heat waves will have on its economies in the future. The autumn issue of our magazine, Too Long, is now available for pre-order. The main story inside is all about the plan to fix Europe. From the economy and trade to politics and war, we discuss the various ways in which Europe could be reborn. Then there's the global section, which includes our interview with the Economist's Washington bureau chief about the state of America. There's also articles on the current status of US-China relations, as well as discussing the politics of disasters, the Pope's involvement in 21st century politics, and the death of the dollar. The EU section includes the latest from the war in Ukraine, how Germany's rearmament could defend Europe, as well as more stories from across the continent. The UK section unpacks Britain's new Prime Minister, as well as the various rumbling issues from Brexit some 10 years on that still plague Burnham. That's just some of the stories in this issue though, with us also launching a brand new business section to go alongside the relaunch of the TLDR Business YouTube channel this month. If you're interested in hearing our takes on all of those topics, then you can get the very best deal by subscribing to Too Long. Subscribers automatically get 20% off every issue as long as they're subscribed. But if you use code AUGUST26, you'll get an additional £3 off your first copy. Plus, if you want more from TLDR, then you can also subscribe to Too Long and TLDR Party in one bundle. The cheapest way to get both subscriptions. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this video and for supporting TLDR.